According to the story, a young priest was asked to preach the funeral homily of a man that he had never met. The man who had died, unfortunately, was rather much a scoundrel and had caused his family a great amount of embarrassment and pain. But the young priest thought he would try to say whatever positives he could think of, and went on, and then went on and on and on. And at one point during the homily, the wife of the deceased leaned over to her son sitting next to her in the front pew and said, "Quick, go look in the casket, make sure that's really your father in there." What do you want to be preached about you at your funeral? If I were the one to preach your funeral homily, what would you want me to say about you? It's a question that I hope you and I will spend some time on, even beyond the time we spend on it right now. It's an important question because first, really, it asks, well, then how am I living now? Are those things that I say I want to be remembered for things that show up in my life now? I'm sure at Mass this weekend there are some dads who say, yeah, I want to be remembered as a loving father. And yet at their death, their children will remember their dad as an alcoholic. A dad who was sometimes loving and sometimes mean. Sometimes helpful and sometimes drunk. I'm sure at Mass this weekend there are some women who would say, I want to be remembered as holy. And upon their death, their children will remember mom as very devout and very pious, but mean or crabby. Is it true that what we say we want to be remembered for is something that is showing up in our lives now? It's also an important question because sometimes we forget to even think how it is that we want to be remembered. And some of the things we sort of default into maybe aren't really noble enough things to want to leave as a legacy. Maybe without thinking about it, we think, I want to be remembered as fun, or as a really good athlete, or as that guy that kept our lawn perfect. Is that a noble enough legacy? Really? As a beloved son or daughter of God, is that what we're really called to leave for the world as our testament, as our witness of Jesus? What is it that you want to be remembered for when you die? When I preside at funerals, before we end, I often remind the family that I know that part of the pain of this day is that when we leave the church after the service, it seems like so much of the world goes by as if nothing happened. How painful it can be to watch the cars drive past the funeral procession, or to hear the laughter of children, or the same songs on the radio. And we're thinking, doesn't the world know that my world has been changed forever? And I want those who are grieving to know that we know. But something that our school children started doing this year that I think is beautiful is this. If the burial is here at our Assumption Cemetery, and the children are at recess when we go by with the procession, the children have begun to just stop their playing and come and line up. Or some of them actually kneel down in reverence along the route that the funeral procession will go. A beautiful sign of reverence for the tenderness of that moment. And sometimes, then when I'm walking back from the cemetery after the burial, some of the children will ask me, what was she like? Or what was he like? And it's not the time to name those qualities of the person that might be scoundrel-like, even if they're there for me. I think in this time, I want to name the best qualities of that person, to hold them up for these children, because that's part of what our lives are meant to do. We are meant to embody some of the best in the world, and we want our children to see that in us, that they too might choose that. And my brothers and sisters, in our scriptures today and on this great feast, Jesus took leave of his disciples. And it mattered so much to Jesus how he would be remembered. It mattered to him deeply that we and all his disciples would remember what he said. And so he preached as powerfully as he possibly could, not only with his words, but with his lives. Because he did not want us simply to remember up here. He wanted us to remember in here and to live those same things that he lived. To love the same way he loved. To be known for the same things that he would be known for. How is it that you want to be remembered? I know how Jesus wants us to be remembered. He wants us to be remembered as people like him. He wants us to be remembered as people who live and love as he did. Yesterday, a young woman from the parish called, and her voice was cracking on the phone, and she had just very recently gotten a diagnosis of cancer. A cancer that's a very fatal cancer. Through a very fortunate turn of events, it was caught remarkably early because of some other tests. And she said she's been really shaken, but she's so grateful because she's going to be okay. And she said, I feel on some level like I've gotten a do-over. She said, it was like waking me up to how I've been living. And she said, I realize now that this is my one life, she said. And I got to live well these precious days I have, because I realize now that I might not know how many of them I have. We might not get that same wake-up call. And there are certainly many of people for whom the final chapter of their lives has been written and the book has been closed. But we who are alive this day are blessed to help have a hand in how the final chapters of our lives might be written. And it's time to decide again how it is that we want to be known, the type of persons that we want to be. And so I ask again, at your funeral, what is it that you want to be said about you? And is that how you're living now? Hello, well, hello, buddy. How are you? Great, glad to hear it. Well, Big Al, I've got a question for you. Go ahead. All right. What would you like people to say about you at your funeral? Good question, yeah. You know, as people are standing around your casket, for example, what would you like them to say about you? I know what. You want them to say, look, he's starting to move. Yeah. That's good. Yeah. And that's good. I can understand why you'd want that. My question was more when we get to the point when that's no longer possible. Oh, okay, yeah. So Big Al, after you die, how do you want people to remember you? What do you want them to think of you as? As great. You want them to think of you as great? Okay. What does great mean? Like Jesus. Like Jesus. Big Al, that's it? Yeah. Kind, and forgiving. Loving, that's good. Oh, I love that that's what you want to be remembered like. And if I could ask you, how have you been doing on that today so far? Busted? Okay, all right, okay. Well, I don't need you to be perfect, but as long as you're working every day to try to be like him, I'll bet that's how people will remember you. Cool. No big deal, the Cardinals aren't dead yet. Bye. Now, boys and girls, it's important sometimes to think, what kind of person are we becoming? And how will people remember us? And could they tell? Does it show that we want to be like Jesus?